So this after today, sorry, we're going to be talking about power. When we talk about politics, studying power is very basic. Now, for this class, uh, one basic question I'd like to ask is, why is power a hot commodity? It seems like everybody wants to have power, and I hope that you answered the forum or the chat that I left in Seoul. All right? So let's start with our discussion. Right. We have power. By definition, power is the possession of control, authority, or influence over others. But power is might, or it is the ability to do something that is desired. And this can be manifested with geopolitics. What is geopolitics? This is politics involving geographic locations or territories. Okay, so I've shown you there a map of the West Philippine Sea, and I hope it's clear enough for you. Okay, so you have the orange line, China, and the yellow line is for the Philippines. Okay, so when a world power like China can lay claim to islands in the South China Sea, even though it is within 200 miles exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. So if you would look at the economic zone of the Philippines is actually within that yellow line. What is economic zone? That means that Filipinos can actually fish or profit out of the produce within that economic line. But the Chinese is, if you can see clearly, is already within the 200 economic zone, the 200 nautical mile. See? So that is power. China is might. You have to show your power. So power implies control. So uneven relationships between the person, group of persons, or entity in control and of the one controlled. Those in control can dictate how other people act, which may not be the latter's choosing. Strictly speaking, the person has power if they can confer punishment or bestow rewards. If there is no compulsion to follow, it is not power but just influence. State exercises powers as a body politic. Politicians wield powers that are derived from the positions they hold and can be beneficial to some and detrimental to others. So, for example, if the use of authority results in oppression, justice may be served through the courts, but only if the country has strong judiciary. Does the Philippines have a strong judiciary? Okay, so now these are the dimensions of power or how power is exercised. And the first one is on decision making. So this is perceived as the influence on the content of decisions. Who decides what to be made and how to execute such decision all involve power. Okay, the departments involve decision making. Judges and justices promulgate judicial verdicts. The executive branch decides on everyday operations of the country. The legislative branch is involved in debates and discussions regarding laws it enacts and matters that needs a legislative inquiry. Next dimension is agenda setting. It involves the ability to set or control political agenda, highlighting one at the exclusion of other issues. So for example, according to Barak and Barats in 1962, power is also the capacity to prevent the making of decisions or non-decision making. For example, controversy surrounds a government official who is allegedly involved in money laundering. Under Section 21 of Article 4 of the 1987 Constitution, the Senate or House of Representatives may conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation. However, if the politician involved is part of the political party in power, members of that party may choose not to have an inquiry to avoid embarrassment and say the courts have the jurisdiction. So they will wash their hands. And the last dimension of power is thought control. So this is seen as an ideological indoctrination or a psychological control where one could change or shape how another thinks or behaves. So in repressive states, citizens undergo brainwashing and mind control in which the virtues of ideology are constantly drummed up in their consciousness. So propaganda is repeatedly broadcast and disseminated to shape individual thoughts and actions. I remember my history lessons in Cambodia, about Cambodia during the killing fields, that every night they would actually play in their sound system their song of their communist song so that everybody would remember it and follow their doctrines. So, but a milder form of brainwashing is using A-list celebrities in advertising campaigns. So why do you think Bong Revilla still won the elections despite the controversies he faced? Because he appealed to the masses by dancing bodots. Most people would forget the many important things they have to consider in choosing a politician. Still, they would always remember the fun that they saw. So if you would remember our previous lesson on political science and other disciplines, I included there the relationship of political science and psychology, right? So this is where it is actually um, connected. Okay, so we have the types of power. One is the eminent domain, police power, and the power of taxation. So let's start with power, police power. Okay, so police power, this doesn't really talk about the police. Okay, so this is the power that is most pervasive, least limitable, and most demanding. So we have here from some Latin, salus populi suprema lex. You can search it up. And we have sic potere tuo ut alienum non laidas. Non laidas. Okay. Salus populi suprema lex means welfare of the people is the supreme law. Well, so sic potere tuo ut alienum non laidas means use your property in such a manner as not to injure that of another. So police power is the power inherent to the state to regulate liberty and property for the promotion of the general welfare of the public. Okay. So the overarching consideration is the welfare of the people, such that police power may be combined with taxation. But we will go to that later on. So, examples. The right of the state to regulate medical education, those education for doctors. It is true that every person has the right to choose a profession or course of study, subject to fair, reasonable, and equitable admission and academic requirements. However, this right is also regulated to protect the general welfare of the citizens, which is crucial in the medical field. If not regulated, medical practice will be rampant, okay? Or the quality of education for doctors will suffer. Another example is the privilege of bearing guns is subject to police power legislation. The right to carry a gun is neither a property nor a property right nor a vested right. The right to carry outside the residence may be revoked anytime. Eminent domain is the inherent right of the state to condemn private property to public use upon payment of just compensation. And these are the conditions upon exercising. So first, there must be adequacy of the compensation. So what does this mean? It means that payment must be at market value. Okay, your homes actually are being assessed once they are finished or being built. No, no, I think when you have to sign the city engineers your blueprint. They're going to actually assess your house to determine how much your tax will be. Okay, so that is the market value or the fair market value. Price, seller is willing to sell and the buyer is willing to buy. But just compensation is actually decided by the courts. Prices presented will serve as a guiding principle in deciding just compensation. Second is the necessity of taking. What is it for? Is it for public use or is it for private purpose? Okay, there was a discussion before between public purpose and private use. Before, it was for the public purpose where it must be used by the general public. So, roads, bridges, etc. But now, they kind of revised it and said that it should be in public use, or now called public advantage, convenience, or benefit. So there would be hospitals, parks, that. And third is the public use character of the purpose of the taking. Okay, what is the constitutional basis of the eminent domain? Section 1, Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of the law, nor shall any person be denied the equal protection of the law. And in Section 9, private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. And of course, the last power, we have the power of taxation. What is taxation? This is the power of the state to assess and collect taxes because taxes are the lifeblood of the nation. So what is the purpose? What are the purpose of taxation? Sorry. First is to pay the national debt. We are not debtless. Okay. Provide for the defense of the state, these are our militaries, and to promote general welfare. Yes. PhilHealth is actually in the middle of a trillion peso controversy. PhilHealth was never clean or in the public eye. There has always been an issue with this department. I remember before when I was not yet working, when I was still paying for my PhilHealth voluntarily, they increased my quarterly contribution because their purpose is that we can they would have enough budget to also cover those who do not have coverage or insurance coverage. Right? So the principal reason why taxes are assessed and collected is to gather funds for the operation of the government. Government employees have to be paid. Public school teachers have to be paid. Public schools have to be built. Hospitals and airports, to name a few. The government also needs to arm the soldiers to protect the state. So taxation must be uniform. That means that all islands in the Philippines must, all people in the Philippines must be taxed, not just a select few. And taxation must also be equitable. What do you mean by equitable? Let me show you a picture. So the lady has a tax rate of 10% where her income is $20,000, while the second guy is also taxed 10% with an income of 30,000, while the executive looking is also taxed 10% with an income of $50,000. Does this show an equitable tax rate? If you say yes because they have the same tax percentage, then I'm sorry to say, but it is not equitable, progressive. So when we say equitable tax, it must be progressive. So since the lady is actually has a smaller income compared to the three, then she should be taxed less. Okay, so progressive taxation basically means that those who earn less must be taxed less, and those who earn more must be taxed more. Okay, so that is the power of taxation. To finish off the class, according to Abraham Lincoln, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Thank you all for listening to this lecture. God bless.